Hello, today we're going to be talking about fetal development, so let's get right into it. So first, let's talk about conception. So what exactly is conception? That's when the sperm meets the egg and the egg becomes fertilized and becomes a zygote, okay? So once it becomes a zygote, that is when conception happens, okay? And to have this happen, these steps must occur. Sperm must be transported, so it has to be in the site of fertilization, which is the fallopian tubes. The egg also has to be transported out of the fallopian tubes after ovulation, okay? And then, of course, the sperm and the egg have to meet. And finally, implantation needs to occur. So the embryo must implant itself into the uterine lining and start growing for fetal development to occur. So this is just a quick look at fetal development from day 0 to 2 weeks. Okay, so the first day, or day 0, is fertilization, when the sperm meets the egg. It starts to cleave around day 1 and then becomes a 2-cell embryo, then a 4-cell. Okay, and then by day 3 or 4, it becomes an 8-cell, not really compacted yet, but it is a morula. So a morula just means it's a compacted ball of cells, basically. Okay, so at day 4, it's a compacted morula. At this checkpoint right here, it's outside of the fallopian tubes. It's now in the uterus. Okay, and then after a morula comes the blastocyst or the blastula. Okay, and that's just a hollow mass of cells. So the cells are kind of like hanging out in the corner, and then it's just like a hollow round ball of cells. Okay, and a blastula is what actually implants itself into the uterine lining. Okay, so day 0, fertilization occurs. Then there's a 2-cell stage and a 4-cell stage. Then becomes a morula, and then a blastula. Okay, so this is just showing it again, but just to note that there is a red and a blue. So the red, that occurs inside the fallopian tubes. So the 2-cell, the 4-cell, even an 8-cell occurs in the fallopian tubes. And then once it hits morula stage, so the compacted cells, it is outside of the uterus most of the time. Okay, and then lastly is the blastocyst that's implanting itself into the uterine lining. Okay, so this is a lot of words, but it is just basically showing you the first 3 months of fetus growth. So during the first month, what you should remember is that the internal organs grow, so the vital organs begin to develop. By the 2nd month, all major body parts have formed, so your arms, your hands, your fingers, even though your fingers will be more like nubs, they're not really like fingers that we have. Your legs, your head, all those things, your eyes, your ears, your nose, and your heart is beating. Okay. By the 3rd month, the head is actually the largest part of the body, which is true for all babies. And that's when it starts to move, and also frown, yawn, hiccup, and do a bunch of other things. So it starts moving a lot more. Okay. So 1st month, vital organs. 2nd month, that is when major body parts have formed. And then the 3rd month, it starts moving around a lot more. Okay, so when exactly will the parent feel the fetus move? That's around 16 to 25 weeks for first pregnancies. And then for second pregnancies, it can be as early as 13 weeks. So it occurs earlier. Doesn't necessarily have to be 13 weeks. It can be later. But usually for second pregnancies, you feel the baby move, or the fetus move, earlier. Okay, and then these pictures are showing the growth of a fetus in a relative common way that you could visualize it. So by 4 weeks, it's a poppy seed. By the end of the 1st trimester, it's as big as a lime, so it grows very fast during the 1st trimester. Then the 2nd trimester starts as a lemon and ends as a corn-sized fetus. And then by the end of the 3rd trimester, that fetus becomes as big as a watermelon. Okay, so that's a pretty big fetus. So now let's talk about folic acid. So this is a super important vitamin that people who are pregnant should or definitely have to take. So it's always present in prenatal vitamins, which every pregnant person should or does take prenatal vitamins. Folic acid is important for brain development, skull development, and your spinal cord development. So without folic acid, something called spina bifida will or may occur. Okay, spina bifida is when the spinal cord and the spinal fluid is outside of the spinal column. Okay, and there's some natural ways that you can get folic acid. So things like broccoli, a bunch of green vegetables, even wheat bread, oranges, papaya, beans, lentils, a bunch of different ways you could gain folic acid. But again, it's super important to take when someone is pregnant. Okay, so now that we talked about fetal development, how does this occur when we look at twins? So there's two ways that twins could happen. Of course, there's identical twins, and then there's fraternal twins. With identical twins, one egg is released from the ovary, and it's in the fallopian tubes, and then one sperm meets that egg and fertilizes it, okay, and becomes a zygote. And then afterwards, when it's a zygote, it splits and kind of mutates and becomes two separate zygotes. Okay, so they have the exact DNA. Okay, so they usually have the same placenta but separate amniotic sacs. They can, but they rarely share the same amniotic sac. Again, very unlikely, but definitely possible. And then there's fraternal twins, which occurs because of hyperovulation. So hyperovulation is when two eggs are actually released during the same ovulation stage. Okay, so two eggs are being released. One is in one side of the fallopian tube, one's on the other side. And then sperm meets both of those eggs. So one sperm implants itself in one egg, another sperm implants itself in another egg. So they're only sharing half their DNA. Okay, they're not exact. So there's two separate zygotes, nothing splitting, it's just two eggs are released at the same time and sperm meets those two eggs. Okay. And with fraternal twins, they have separate placentas because, again, they're two separate fertilizations occurring. Okay. So that's it for fetal development. I hope you learned something new, and I will see you next time.